Speaking of that, we talked about different, I guess, generations and stuff like that and actors. I'm sure you know where I'm going to get here with the big age-old debate. You know who is the best actor or the best Spider-Man?
Yeah.
What would you say would be your if I was going to ask you, like I've never heard of these characters, and you told me about Toby, Andrew, and Tom. What would you say would be the strengths and weaknesses of like all three of them? And like, like their arguments to make. Like let's say I was making an argument for like Andrew or Tommy or Toby. Like what would you like I guess say?
Well, I kind of shed my opinion on Tom a little bit, but I think that he's not had his time to shine as Spider-Man himself. So the new start with wherever they go with him in after No Way Home, I'm excited to see. Whereas my arguments for Toby, I would say, he's pivotal. Like if you think of comic book movies, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man set the bar. Like movies after that are pretty hard to. I mean, like you got to think like the original Ben Affleck Daredevil movie or the Elektra movie, like Fantastic Four. Like those are okay watchable, but like it's not the serious good story, good like CGI. I mean, as it was 2002, but like that movie like legitimately set the bar. I mean, everyone hates Spider-Man 3 for whatever reason, but I personally I think it's like my guilty pleasure. And Spider-Man 2 is just like when you think of sequels, it's hard to get a good sequel, but that sequel was even like more enjoyable to me to follow up the first one. Continue watching them as I get older. So I would say that Tobey Maguire is just really good, captures Peter Parker really, really well. His awkwardness, what he thinks is cool, and that's why I think Spider-Man 3 is kind of like a little goofy, but I think that's what Peter Parker thinks being cool is. And I think that you could tell that by the awkwardness, and the writing a little bit weird in the direction with that too many villains at one time is kind of hard without good storyboarding. But Toby, just like I'd say, he's really really good Peter Parker there, and I equally love his Spider-Man aspects. I mean, the swinging scenes with the music, freaking amazing. Um, so I'd say Tobey Maguire probably sits my number one, just nostalgia and his time in the movies were just amazing. Now I think Andrew Garfield kind of got like the shit end of the stick with Sony. I think that the Amazing Spider-Man in 2012 was a great, great, great movie. I think that once again they kind of fit to like the era of teens. They really tried to make Peter Parker a little bit more, quirky and a little bit more cool than it would, would appear. But he really is just a nerd. I don't think that he needed to be skateboarding and doing all that stuff because I just don't think that that's Peter Parker personally. But they did capture like I said, the awkwardness a little bit. And I like the more involvement in high school that he had. But they kind of, I mean, like it fit really well for them to escape from that on the sequel. But like I said, unfortunately, Sony just kind of like saw the money and rushed a sequel, and it was just fell short. Um, and I think that the Spider-Man that we saw from Andrew Garfield was amazing. Like he was funny. He had really good quips. He had really good swinging scenes, all that type of thing. Like his character. And then you saw like the most impactful things that really weren't covered in the Tobey Maguire thing or movies, such as like Gwen Stacy's father's death, or her death as well. Like that was pretty brutal seeing that, and it really sucks to see that Andrew Garfield's like whole like series got cut short to make a deal with Tom Holland there.
What's your opinion on the whole talk about Andrew Garfield getting a third, movie to finish up the trilogy? Would you say that's like a yes or a no on that?
Um, I would watch it. I mean, I would watch anything. To be honest with you, I would love to see it. I think that I mean, his speech about Spider-Man at Comic-Con was probably one of my favorite speeches of all time. Um, And that's exactly how I feel. Like the fact that he respects the character just as much as I do is it's kind of cool. Cool to see. I know that he really valued being Spider-Man. So yeah, 100%. I would support a third movie.
Yeah, it's something I really think you nailed it on the head of like Andrew, how he kind of got the shit end of the stick because he's interesting to me. Where if you ever look at his choreography, especially the library scene where he's going up against the lizard,
Oh, it's
how
great.
he's literally crawling on the lizard like a spider, basically, and like crawling around him. And even his web slinging is very Amos like a spider. And to me, I think like when I think of like Spider-Man in combat, I think this is more likely what Spider-Man would do compared to like let's say Tobey Maguire. I love him to death, but watching him, it's like watching a brawler basically fight. Like I feel like I'm watching something that I don't know Luke Cage would do. Basically, we're just like throwing haymakers and trying to knock the guy out. It's like less finesse and
Yeah, I would
more like
agree.
physical
I would
strength.
agree. 100%. The combat and the fighting scenes from Andrew Garfield were 100% better. Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that's like what I really aim to see, in media is, Spider-Man actually fighting like that because he's just so quick, so agile, and like it's kind of like, stiff when you watch it and like I don't know, it's kind of hard it's hard to
It's
it's
fluid.
Spider-Man,
It's very
not really
fluid,
Spider-Man.
basically. Yeah.
And I'm not huge. I mean, I'll say too, like the practical suits will always win, in my opinion, over any CGI suits. I can't stand it, man. Like the suit ups, like you get from Andrew Garfield and specifically Tobey Maguire. When he pulls that chest out and the theme music comes on, he like picks up the suit or he rips his button shirt. I mean, I've ruined so many button shirts when I was a kid because I was trying to be like, it's that Superman rip, man. It's just so cool to see the suit up, and I think it's one of my favorite things about him.
Well, we covered a lot about the movies. Moving it
Mhm.
over a bit to a different genre. What's your opinion on the Spider-Man TV shows that we had from the original animated series to what we have currently today? If you're up with any of those, is there any specific show you'd recommend to like newcomers who like just now are being introduced to Spider-Man? Like, what would you say is the go-to? Like, you need to watch this show first.
Man, I would say, Fox Kids start off with for the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. That, first of all, was one of the best shows. I loved the stories. I love the characters. It was different for sure. I mean, not a lot of people are aware of like Madam Web. Not a lot of people are used to like some of the other villains, like the Hobgoblin and stuff like that. I think that I mean, through however many seasons that they had in that show, like really covered a lot, and it was good. I mean, it wasn't as dark because I mean it's a kids show, but I mean still had pretty great, great stories. I mean they kind of gave Venom like a butt cheek head, if you remember. It's like the little he had like the two
Yeah,
tone
that OG design.
red and blue, and then he had like a little butt cheek on his head. It was really funny. Um, but I would say yes, that Spider-Man show. It's not too deep, It's pretty easy to watch, and I mean it's college era Peter Parker. He's got both. He's got freaking Mary Jane Watson in that show. He's got Gwen Stacy. He's got Felicia Hardy, uh, Black Cat, which is one of his lovers. I mean, a lot of people don't really pay attention to. It's kind of, I mean, most people only focus on, MJ, and I think that's like kind of, Peter Parker's the Rizzler, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Liz Allen, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's one thing Homecoming got good is, they had Liz Allen in there, but I mean, like, I really, really like the fact that they, should cover all of his different love interests because they did shape him in one way or another, especially Gwen Stacy.
You ever notice too that like with the women he dates, it really affects his portrayal and mood and attitude, not just as Peter Parker, but as Spider-Man. Like
Oh, 100%.
compared to him being with like Gwen to, Mary Jane, you can see like I guess this is something I personally noticed a lot, but different like change in tones, if you will. Like
Yeah, and I think that's what makes him relatable too. I mean, in a way, not everyone's girlfriend gets killed by the Green Goblin, but at the same time, it's like everyone has those phases where they, grow up and have like, their childhood love, and then, then they end up finding that like the one, which was his Mary Jane. So
Now, still on the TV shows, what would you say is kind of like a guilty pleasure show? Like one that doesn't get talked about enough, but you enjoy watching it. Like, yeah, it's pretty good. Do you have any of those
well,
recommendations?
I would say I always when I'm bored and